Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, we have Amanda Ferrat on the show, and she is going to talk to us about EFT tapping. This is something that really changed a lot of things for me and helped me get a hold of my anger issues. And if you know me, you're like, really? You had anger issues? And I promise you that tapping is the reason why you think that. So, welcome, Amanda, and thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into tapping.
Well, in January of 2018, I had at that point lost multitudes of people in just a 15-month span and was going back to grad school after each loss. And finally, it caught up to me. Life imploded, took a break from school. Didn't take long to realize I didn't want to go back to grad school, that I was happy being a grad school dropout, and took a lot of time to do some healing and kind of taking care of myself, mentally, emotionally, physically. And then end of 2019, I was like, okay, I'm ready to come back into the world. I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to work for anybody else, because at this point my health had gotten to the point where I was disabled and it was just not going to work for me to go back anywhere full time. And I was like, what can I do? So I started my business, which at that time it was Value Yourself Coaching. And then COVID hit. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, oh, well, I'll just sign up to learn all the things and keep doing more healing and professional and personal growth. And I came across Jackie McDonald on a live video on Jaya Rose's feed. And I got on just as they were starting the tapping. So I followed along because it's very much like Simon Says, and was instantly crying and was having all these things come up that I had not been able to release in therapy, hypnosis, or any other healing modality I had tried. Tapping tapped into it literally instantly. And I was like, what is this magic? I need this in my life right now for my own healing. And I need to do this with clients. This is what I'm meant to do. And so, of course, Jackie was about to start a new training. And so I gave her my credit card info right away and signed right up. And that took about 6 months. So I graduated actually in February of this year. And I'm now a basic EFT practitioner. I'm currently in the advanced program with Jackie McDonald. So by the end of April of this year, I will be an advanced EFT practitioner, and I love it. I love what it does for me. I love what it does for clients. It is truly magic. And I love Jackie's method. It's called the McDonald Manifestation Method, because you can go back and work on old wounds, thought patterns, beliefs, trauma, heal inner childhood stuff. You can work on stuff that you're dealing with right now, like your anger, right? Whatever emotionally you're dealing with right now. And in Jackie's method, you can do future work. So you can start to bring in visualizations and other things to help you get out of your own way and have better receptivity for whatever the future is to bring, and kind of pave your own path and really bring in whatever you want for your future. So I love that you can kind of do past, present, and future work with this method.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that is really, for me, same thing. Like, I started doing it and I released all this anger, and it just felt like I had taken off like coats, right? Like, have you ever worn a coat and then you take it off and you're like lighter and everything
Yes.
feels good and you can feel the warmth coming in, and then immediately just started bawling my eyes out. And so it is so fascinating how how it works. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So tell me, how does it work?
Well, there is science behind it. In fact, if you like to read, there's a great book called The Science Behind Tapping by Dr. Peta Stapleton. But it is a combination of Eastern and Western practices. So the Eastern practices are when you tap on those various points on your body, you're tapping on acupressure meridians. And when you start to do that tapping, what it does is it signals to the sympathetic nervous system, the limbic system, and your amygdala, which is the part of your brain which is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze, to calm down. So your sympathetic nervous system kind of tells your body to calm down. once you've interrupted it, and you can tap into your parasympathetic nervous system. Once you've calmed your limbic system, you have control again of your emotions. You can respond instead of react. And then once you've calmed your amygdala down in combination with those other systems, you can go into a rest or repose state and access deeper parts of your subconscious, come from higher parts of your brain to do better, clearer, more constructive decision making. And you can gain control, right? You can literally gain emotional freedom. That's why it's called emotional freedom techniques, because you become the master and you can get into your subconscious and go back and heal traumas, wounds, thought patterns, beliefs. You can shift from one emotional state to another in the here and now. And like I said, in Jackie's method, we bring in visualizations and other methods to help you do future work as well. But the science is literally, you're just calming all those stress symptoms and our signals and, systems in our body that are in place to keep us safe, right? From the dawn of time, we had to operate in that fight, flight, or freeze because we had to keep ourselves safe. Our emotions serve a purpose. Part of that purpose is to keep us safe. And so our body's doing what it needs to do in those moments of elevated emotional or like remembering things. And tapping comes in and interrupts that and says, no, you're okay. Let's work through this. Let's get you to where you want to be instead.
Interesting. Okay, so for my listeners who have followed me for a while, I refer to this as the stress volcano, right? And sometimes that stress just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and it feels like eventually that volcano just is going to burst. So what I teach is how to climb down the mountain. And EFT basically is a way to do that. It's a tool in your toolbox. And I have to say, I did not realize EFT stood for emotional freedom technique. That's fascinating.
Yeah. And it's actually plural techniques because we can bring in different things. Like in Jackie's method, we bring in visualization and some other tools, right? There's a few different methods out there of EFT. And like I said, I will forever be a fan of Jackie's method just because, well, this is what I had told to me one time. I was teaching EFT somewhere, and one of the responses I had afterwards was, you teach this so beautifully. All my other experiences with learning EFT or being, having somebody talk about EFT, it was like you were fixing somebody that was broken and that we had to be broken to need EFT. And you teach it so compassionately, like it's a tool everybody can use and is accessible for all. And that's the truth. It is accessible for all. You don't need to use EFT. Nobody's broken, right? We all have emotions. It's okay if you're not okay. And let's put tools in your toolbox. Like if we can give somebody a tool to help them deal with emotional regulation or, healing past trauma or correcting old thought patterns that are keeping people from living the lives they need and want to live, then let's do it. In fact, I wish I would have had EFT tapping when I did school-based mental health. Mm-hmm. I worked in school-based mental health for 4 years. I cannot imagine how differently those kids' lives would have been if I would have been able to teach them a tool that they could have used, to keep them from blowing up in class or to keep them, so that they could regulate and make it through the day successfully.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got thinking. Like, if I would have had this in high school, and I had a good high school experience, but still just to be able to calm that anxiety and to feel my body would have revolutionized the way that I felt the majority of my life up until this point,
Right. Yeah. I've had anxiety my whole life. In fact, I, just didn't get it diagnosed until I was very much an adult. But if I would have had this in, high school or college or any of those other moments in my life, it would have been a total game changer. But now I've got it now and I get to teach it to other people. And I love that.
Yeah, that is awesome. Being able to teach it to people who, are in a rough spot. That is an incredible gift to be able to give people,
Yes.
Oh my
I'm all about harm reduction and healing. And I want, with all my loss that I've had and experienced in my life, my dad was gone at 62. And so I've learned you only live once. And I lost peers. I've lost friends. I've lost kids that I used to work with. So I've seen death at all ages. And so you'd never know how much life you have left to live. So if you can make it the best life ever and truly live it optimally and it gives you regulation over your emotions. I love emotions.
Yeah.
I am an emotional wellness counselor. I love emotions. I don't call them positive or negative. They all have a job to do. But when we get that emotional mastery
Mhm.
and then can have that emotional freedom to come from a place where we're in the driver's seat and we get to respond instead of react, that changes your life completely. And you can set better boundaries. You live in alignment with your values. You can make decisions easier. You know what does and doesn't work for you. And it just kind of is like, you just
Yeah.
have to kind of take a deep breath and live life with a lot more ease.
100%. Absolutely agree with that. You said that so eloquently, Amanda. I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell me, or not tell me. Or tell me if you agree with this. I don't believe that we have to stay in a suffering state for very long. No
No,
matter what has happened, like we were not meant to suffer,
right.
and so tell me, how can tapping help people to with regulating those emotions and work through those things, and like how have you seen that play out, I guess?
Well, I think the first step to any kind of emotional intelligence, mastery, freedom, etc., is awareness.
Mhm.
So in tapping, so the eastern part of tapping is the tapping on the acupressure meridians. The Western philosophy is where we bring in the talk therapy. So that's where, if you're working with a practitioner, I'm going to start to ask you questions
Mhm.
and I'm going to reflect your language back to you as we're tapping. And that's going to help you know, this is what I'm feeling. No,
Yes.
these are the emotions that are coming up for me. So you start to have that, build that awareness muscle. And that is key, even for folks that don't tap, right? If you're like, no, tapping something, I just like, that's too weird for me. I'm not, you need to build your awareness muscle to start to gain emotional mastery. And so once you're aware, then when those moments where something difficult comes up or heavy comes up, you can take that beat to kind of, okay, this is what I'm feeling. What is it trying to tell me? Okay, thank you. And now you can respond. Again, you're responding instead of reacting. Because oftentimes in those moments where really difficult or powerful emotion comes up, we are reacting. We're
Mhm.
coming from that primal, the amygdala is activated and we are coming from primal brain. Whereas with tapping, we can tap in, calm all that primal brain and primal systems down and come from a heightened state of awareness and say, okay, yeah, I'm really anxious right now, but I love and accept myself anyway. Even though this anxiety is really intense and I feel it all throughout my body, I am safe and I love and accept myself anyway, right? So we can just immediately start to calm ourselves down and kind of move ourselves, and tapping is beautiful. We start, if we're super intense, if we're super activated in whatever we're feeling, the first round of tapping is called venting. So we're honoring whatever's going on by just giving it space and talking it out. And again, that awareness piece, right? Like, I'm mad, I'm anxious, and if you need to throw some expletives or whatever else in there, you can. That's the beauty of tapping as well,
That's
as
me.
you get to use your language. So if you're effing whatever, like whatever, get creative with the language. And the more aligned you are with it being true to your language, the better. In fact, when we go back and do inner childhood work, we use the language of 8-year-old self, or, so if
Mhm.
something's stupid or icky or gross, we use that language, even if it feels silly because you're now an adult and you as the adult are doing the tapping. No, you use that language because you're working on the brain in that moment. So if you are really mad and it comes out with certain language, use that language, because then you're really honoring. And again, that awareness piece, you are honoring where you're at. And then once you kind of give it that space to be like, all right, I've been seen and I've been heard,
Mhm.
then you can start to go to the next round, which is when you're a little calmer, you can bring in that possibility. Okay, what do I need to let this go? What answers am I needing? What am I not getting? What do I got to do to let this go? When am I going to feel safe enough to let this go? Is there something else really coming up? Is this really the emotion I'm feeling, or is there something else behind it?
Mhm.
And then you can kind of like, okay, no, like, this is what I need. All right. Like, I'm ready to welcome in, this is where you start to like, I'd rather feel this way, or I'd rather have this, or you bring in kind of what you're wanting instead.
Mhm.
And then if that works, right, if it doesn't bring anything else back up to the surface that brings your number back up, then you can kind of, the next round is affirmations. And that's where you kind of bring in those I am statements where I am calm, I am safe, I am ready for, da, da, da. And then, so those are kind of the 3 rounds, and they help us, again, move from whatever difficult situation, memory, event, emotion is going on to where we want to be. And it can take several rounds. Our numbers may bounce up and down. It's not a perfectly linear, perfectly wrapped package of a process. But one of the things I like to teach is, if you're out in public, or if something's kicking you up right away, you can just start tapping on the side of your fingers. So you literally just take fingers from the one hand and tap right alongside the nail bed of the fingers on the other hand, and you can start tapping in immediately and start calming yourself down. You can start talking to yourself if you're somewhere where you can talk to yourself either in your head or out loud. But even the tapping alone will start to, I even feel it. I'm like, and then, my language started to slow down, because it totally,
it's so soothing.
it just signals to your body to be like, calm down. Yeah. You're okay.
That's how I felt. Like, it was like, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So tell me also, like, this is what I was going to say. For those of you who are listening to the podcast right now, I am going to publish the YouTube version of this video so you can actually see where we're tapping. And like Amanda said, it's just on the sides of your fingers. But tell me, Amanda, what are meridians and why do we tap there?
So just like acupressure, right? Like, I'm still learning some of the science, but each of the points has a different kind of meridian it activates. So like the karate chop point, which is the side of the hand, is the small intestine meridian. Top of the head is the governing vessel. So the governing vessel is actually our first meridian that develops after conception. So it's what runs all the way down our spine.
Okay.
And then eyebrow point is the bladder meridian. Side of the eye is gallbladder. Under the eye is stomach. Under the nose is governing vessel again. So again, back of the body. Chin is central vessel. So central vessel is the front of the body. So central vessel and governing vessel are like yin and yang. Okay. So these are 2 of my favorite tapping points, is under the nose and under the chin, because it literally, like, you're calming down the back side of your body, then you're calming down the front side of your body. Collarbone point is kidney meridian. Under the arms, which is, for us ladies, is kind of where our broadband hits under our armpits, is the spleen. And then the chest point is the liver meridian, and the wrist point is the lung meridian. So what that does is it's basically act like, not only does it, get the sympathetic nervous system, the limbic system, and the amygdala calm down, but it brings it into a whole body experience. Mm-hmm. It starts to let the whole body know, hey, calm down. Like, we're going to come back to one, right? Kind of, we're safe. Everything's okay. And so it makes it kind of more of a full body experience.
Interesting. Yeah. When I was doing this, I was tapping just like on my knees, but I was tapping, like my knee was hitting that karate chop point, that kind of the fleshy part on the outside of your hand. And that made such a big difference. And I, of course, then couldn't say why. But yeah, I started with like, I am 10 out of 10 angry, and then worked. And I said, why? Why am I angry? And then all of a sudden, then after I said that out loud, kind of, yelled it, then like, okay, now I'm 8 out of 10 angry. And then same thing, you kind of work your way down. And then as I felt my whole body take over, then it went right down to, a 2 or a 3. And that it's just such an incredible way to connect the mind body experience when you feel out of control,
Yes. And I'm still learning about the meridians and the science of it, but our meridians, so the governing vessel, like, right, it runs from, I think, back of our skull all the way down. Central vessel runs the front. We've got meridians that run all up our arms, all through. So when we are tapping on those various points, yes, it corresponds to maybe certain organs or whatever, but we're activating those entire, so it's a mind body connection. We are literally bringing our mind and our body together, which, if anybody knows anything about like meditation or mindfulness, it is where you are working to bring that, because again, then you are in a rest repose state, and you can make clearer, more conscious decisions and have control and awareness of your emotions.
So incredible. Okay. And tell me also, if you are, say, for instance, like you have an upset stomach or something like that, can you tap on the stomach meridian to literally help soothe your stomach?
That's actually, I don't know that.
Okay.
But like I said, I know that I love the nose and chin point because it literally one's the back side, one's the front side.
Yeah.
So I got to pull up my cheat sheet here again real quick. But so let's see, for example, the stomach meridian was under the eye. So,
Okay.
that would be, it's an experiment I've meant to be, trying. But
Yeah.
yeah, so let's say somebody was dealing with anxiety and anxiety lived in their stomach. That might be a point where I would want to maybe spend a little more time or direct them to, if like, again, they're somewhere and they can excuse themselves to a restroom and they've only got a couple minutes to get it together. That might be where, yeah, let's try that one.
Yeah.
But everybody that I've worked with has different, like, I don't like under the arms or under the chest.
Mhm.
And mostly that's because I'm a big girl and it's uncomfortable and awkward.
Right.
And it's hard to like hit those
Hard
points
to
in a way
do
that
that.
feels
Yeah.
right. It's hard to do
Feel
them
like
in a
a
way that
chicken.
feels right. And it just doesn't look cute. Like, because I go live
Not
for
real
my face.
discreet. Yeah.
No, I go live for my Facebook group all the time to do tapping. And I'm like, you guys know I'm skipping under the arms and under the chest because it just doesn't look cute on video. And I also like the wrist point, which is the lung meridian, which I have respiratory issues. And so
Okay.
that's another one that is comforting to me. Also, when you tap, you might find that you start to yawn. Again, you're entering that rest
Oh.
repose, but yawning is something because we're balancing our oxygen, we're bringing ourselves into a calmer state. And so you might find yourself getting like really kind of sleepy. Like I said, when I started doing the finger tapping, my language automatically slowed because you just kind of like start to get cozy and feel like you can just be like, but yeah, it's really funny as a practitioner to watch when I'm working with people. I know it's working when I start to see yawns on the screen.
That is an interesting like combination or connection there. I think that we don't realize how, and whether we're actually truly tired or we're just trying to sort of like soothe, I think
Yep.
it's interesting how we're all like, ready to cuddle up. For those, I don't know if you guys can see right now, I'm literally in a blanket, and that's what makes me think like, yeah, I could go for that right about now. Oh my
Well,
God.
those that are watching, like that's my blanket hiding back there. I've got a blanket in my office at all times because it can get really cold in here too. So
That's the thing. It's freezing in my living room. So, or in my office living room is like the same room. So, yeah, it's real chilly in here. That just makes it even better.
yes.
Oh gosh. Okay, so tell me also, because I'm wondering, like, like how often should people tap? Should they just use it when they're feeling anxious or angry or upset, or is it more like a practice that we can do every day?
Both.
Okay.
So there are lots of folks who use it as a daily practice.
Mhm.
Because again, especially in the method I'm trained in, which is the McDonald manifestation method, it is a way to kind of clear any blocks or cobwebs or things. We like to get in our own ways a lot as human beings. And so there's a lot of people that use it as a daily practice to kind of solidify in their affirmations or solidify in future. I don't like to use the word manifestation because often spiritual bypass happens there, but whatever you need to kind of like make yourself receptive and ready for whatever the universe has to offer, right? Getting out of your own way. Um, so that's great as a daily practice, right? And especially if you're trying to have more self-love or self-worth
Mhm.
or more emotional mastery and awareness, it's great as a daily practice to kind of get up in the morning or whenever you can, check in with how you're feeling. Yeah, I'm a little anxious today because I've got these things on my calendar today, and I'd really like to have more confidence around them. So I'm going to check in and tap in on that. So that's where it's great as a daily practice.
I love that.
Okay,
Tap in. It's
yeah,
like tapping into yourself as well.
yes, yes. And again, it's strengthening that muscle, right? The awareness, the emotional awareness muscle. When you literally are forced to kind of stop, check in with yourself. How am I feeling? How would I rather? This is why I'm feeling that way, possibly, right? Or I'm curious why I'm feeling this way, right? Gain that that awareness, and then this is how I'd rather feel. I'm going to get myself there.
Yeah.
And then it is a great interrupter, right? So if something, especially I work with grief. Grief is one of my niches that I specialize in. And grief is a shapeshifter. You can be fine 1 second and then something will trigger something that just sets you off. And so it is a great interrupter.
Mm-hmm.
And it is great for shifting. Okay, this has been triggered. I'm now feeling sad or overwhelmed. I'm going to start tapping in, whatever that needs to look like, right? Wherever you're at, whatever kind of tapping you can do. I also, for moms, right? Like moms right now are so overwhelmed.
Yes.
And let's say you feel like you're about to blow your top and scream at your children, because it happens and that's okay.
Multiple
We're human.
times a day.
Right. But if you can take a couple minutes and be like, all right, I don't want to yell at my children. I'm, like, let's tune into this stress and let's tap it out first. So it can be a great tool to kind of interrupt. I mean, you called it the stress volcano earlier, right? So if you feel that volcano building, you can kind of, let's tamper that back down. Let's get that in control before I blow.
So how do people know? Okay, so first we have to acknowledge that feeling. So this is how I'm feeling, and start to tap. Do the karate chop point or whatever point we feel comfortable.
Right.
If you're in public, you can do these things discreetly. And I think that's for me like the biggest thing. And I am love yoga, practice yoga regularly, but like not real discreet when I am freaking out at my desk at work. And so
it's a little obvious if you're doing downward dog in the middle of your office with people walking by, or you're walking down the street. It's kind of hard to throw out a yoga mat and go into a
exactly. Also like sort of time consuming, not a real quick fix.
Right.
And so I think that go ahead.
You can even one hand tap. So you can take your thumb and tap it along the nail beds of your other fingers. So I did this while driving. It was on election night, right? Everything was heightened. I had done a tapping live for everybody's nerves. And then I had to go pick up a grocery order. And here in Portland, Oregon, I live kind of on the outskirts. So we get a lot of, the people with the big trucks with the flags flying off, right? And it can be a little scary. And so I got next to one of them and I took a hand off the steering wheel and started tapping on my fingers before I even knew what I was doing. Because it's just become you build that muscle, and the more you build that muscle, the quicker you can literally just start to take care of yourself by start tapping on your fingers, or, all right, I'm going to sneak off to the bathroom because I need to do a full sequence or whatever you need.
Interesting. Gosh, I love that. Yeah. I think too, when we are to the point where it's automatic, it's such a game changer in our just way to cope with whatever, whether it's grief or anxiety or stress or, any emotion, I feel like that is the goal. When our default is tapping or our default is managing that in some way. So it's so powerful.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And tell me also, so let's see, what I was thinking is we acknowledge those feelings. We start tapping and then we say why we're feeling those if we know. And then we say what we would rather feel. Is that right?
Kind of, yes. So if you're doing it with a practitioner, they're going to ask questions to kind of know what they need to tap on, and then they'll lead you through the sequence. If you're doing it by yourself, again, if you're really heightened, so if on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're between an 8 and a 10, you're just going to vent it out. So it's going to be like, I'm really anxious. I feel it in my body. I feel it here. It's really intense, or, just kind of give it space.
Yeah.
If you're between a 4 and a 7, that's where you start to like, I am curious why I feel this way, or I'm ready to let this go. I wonder what it'll take to let this go. I'd rather feel da-da-da instead. Right. And then if you're calm enough, if you're a 3 and under, that's where you bring in those I am affirmation statements.
Okay. Gotcha. And what are some examples of those? Because I'm thinking, or what are some common ones that you use with your clients?
I am safe. I am worthy. I am loved. I am enough. I am powerful. I use my voice. I don't play small. I believe in myself, right? Any of those kind of positive affirmation statements. Or if they're moving from a state, a lot of times I'm helping people work through old thought patterns or beliefs.
Okay.
So a lot of times it is that like, I'm not going to listen to those voices anymore. I'm going to honor my voice. I'm going to honor my values, right? So just kind of stepping into those power statements of like, nope, this is what I choose to believe. This is what I'm going to honor now.
Interesting. I was talking to somebody earlier about the power of fear and how much fear has a hold of us. And I spent a lot of years dictated by fear. And so I got thinking, I kind of made an I am statement that is, I am courageous. Fear does not control me, or fear doesn't hold me back. And I think that that's such a powerful one too, especially like right now with the pandemic and with
Yeah,
everything else that's going on, whether that's affecting you directly, you're sick, or, financially, or with your family, or with your job, or whatever.
right.
And so, okay, that is super, just such a good tool.
Right. I did a tapping in my group the other night on anxiety. And I think some of the affirmation statements I got to were, I will accept that what I can't control. And I will only worry about that which I can control. Right. Like kind of letting go, right? Whatever we need to release to receive. So yeah, it doesn't have to be an I am statement. It
Mhm.
can look a little differently, but it's whatever that power statement is that you need to start to kind of integrate more. And that's where a daily practice, like if somebody, I know a lot of people pick affirmations for the year or a word for the year, right?
Uh,
So that's where a daily practice of tapping can, again, strengthen that muscle, bring those in to the point there where like you get to the point where I am safe, right? Especially for people, because fear's job is to keep us safe,
right.
right? So especially if we go back to again that primal brain, right? Fear was to keep us safe from the saber-toothed tigers or whatever else was out there.
Yep.
And now there's a lot of, fear still plays a role, right? There's a lot of things out there to be afraid of. And but right now it's so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
And uncertainty brings a lot of anxiety and stress. And so that was another focus of my tapping that I did this week earlier. And so, just kind of getting ready to let go of that. And again, what can I control? Where can I put my energy? And I think one of my favorite ones is I am safe.
Yeah.
Just reminding, or safe enough, or I'm safe right now, right? Like I
Yeah.
know not everybody feels safe all the time. So that's the important piece
Mhm.
is what language works for you.
Okay.
It's very
Yeah.
adaptable.
And I think too, you have to use words that you often say. Like nobody can
Mhm.
say to somebody else, use this affirmation or use
Right.
this phrase, because it has to resonate with us.
Exactly. And I'm very intuitive. So if I'm working with clients, sometimes I'll get what I call downloads right from the universe
Mhm.
of something that feels very intuitive and sometimes that will land with clients and sometimes it won't. And I always say, take what works for you, leave the rest. It's not going to hurt my feelings, but
Yes.
this is what the universe is like telling me. So you can take it or leave it. And usually they land really well. And people are like, oh my gosh, can you email that to me? Did you write that down? Like I didn't write that down. And so
Isn't that
yeah, like
interesting?
yeah. So and I like my intuition has skyrocketed with EFT tapping.
That was going to be my
And
next
yeah.
question. Do you feel like you're more intuitive now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh
And
yeah.
is that because with EFT tapping, we sort of raise our frequency and open up those channels?
Yeah. And again, I want to almost write the ABCs of like emotional wellness. But A's got like 3 or 4 of them. And the first one is just again, I'm going to say awareness.
Mhm.
Awareness, awareness, awareness. The more aware we become of our emotions and where they're coming from, what they're trying to tell us, the more mastery we have, the more control we have, the more we can respond. And so I think that's a part of it too, is I've worked really hard on that awareness. I've always been empathic and highly sensitive and a little bit intuitive,
Mhm.
to the point that like kind of scared me sometimes when I was younger. I had a couple premonitionary dreams that weren't good ones, right? And when they came,
Okay.
like that was really hard. But so it got stuffed away for a lot of years. And I
Yeah.
think that tapping has helped again, just kind of settle all the noise,
Mhm.
right? And allow me to just be okay in the quiet and be receptive to whatever is out there to hear, so to speak. And that awareness muscle has been built enough that I can tune really well into myself
Uh-huh.
and into the universe and to others. And it's a muscle that I'm still working on. And I also use crystals. Like people can't see them, but I'm surrounded by crystals here in my office, and I have them throughout my house. And so I am a little woo. I bring some of that in, but it's definitely like you gotta have a practice. You gotta use those muscles to build them.
100%.
So
Yeah, I love that. That's so funny. I am a person of faith, but I always have these contradictions. Like, I'm a person of faith and also like all these different things that are like a huge contradiction. And, every once in a while you'll get this person who's like, you can't love Jesus and yoga together. And I'm like, listen, lady, like there are no rules here. Okay. There's
right.
no rules. Yeah, I think that's always funny to see those things.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell me, Amanda, if you were to teach the world one thing, what would it be?
Mm. That it's okay if you're not okay, right? Like my big my movement that I want to create is that all emotions are valid. They all have a job to do. They aren't positive or negative. They aren't good or bad. They just are. And the more you allow them to be, and the more you become aware, the more mastery you will have. But even in those moments where it's hard, it's okay if you're not okay. And to just keep going and to ask for support when you need it.
Love it. Very wise. So wise. Okay. And tell me also, because I know that some people are a little bit hesitant to do like quote unquote traditional counseling or,
Right,
whatever their perception or idea is of traditional
right.
counseling. So tell me, how does sort of alternative therapies, how does EFT, how does all that fit into our, very Western idea of traditional counseling?
Well, I am a master of social work dropout. So I was actually going to be one of those traditional
Traditional
therapists
counselors.
that was pursuing an LCSW. And part of why I decided I didn't want to go back to grad school is I didn't want to have to jump through the hoops.
Mhm,
It's a lot of money. It's a
mhm.
lot of work. And while higher education is a privilege, there's also a lot of oppression and there's a lot of boundaries in the world of social work. You have to work for other people or under other people to get to your licensure point. And then once you're licensed, then you can have some independence. And I was like, you know what? I want that independence now. I don't want to be held to bureaucratic red tape BS that doesn't truly serve people, because I see a lot of problems in the world of social work where more harm is done than good. And I come from a standpoint of harm reduction. And so um I'd already gone halfway through grad school, so I did get a wellness counseling certification from Cornell to help bring some of that grad school education back, because I'd quit in the middle of trauma. So trauma brain likes to shut things down and store them away.
Yes, it
And
does.
so so I do know like CB, certain types of therapy, right? Like
Mhm.
solutions-based therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, and I'm trained in some of those things. And so I take some of those pieces, right? But what I love about EFT and client directed counseling, which is what I do, is that the client is in the driver's seat.
Mhm.
It is client focused. And I, as the practitioner, the counselor, come and meet you where you're at, emotionally, mentally, in that moment. And it is always about the client, not about me as the client, the counselor or practitioner. And so if something isn't landing, if something isn't working well, say so. And you're not going to hurt my feelings, because my job is to keep you safe and to serve you. And so I think that is part of why, like, in grad school, if you graduate and get your MSW, you inevitably are typically working for an agency. You're working under someone else's license for those first few years. And so that means you have to play by somebody else's rules. And while I like rules to an extent, because I like some order and boundaries, I also sometimes buck the rules because I want what's best for myself and the others in the situation. And so I kind of struggled in my jobs in the past, in my, mental health and social services jobs, because there were so many rules, and these rules didn't always serve the clients.
Mhm.
They served the institutions or the systems. And so what I love about what I do is that I get to serve the clients first and foremost,
I
and
feel
I
like
get to meet them where they're at.
that is why you're so welcoming and approachable. And I
Thank
think that
you.
you're welcome. I think that the reason I asked that question is because I've had my best friend is a MSW. I've had a lot of people on the podcast, in my life, in the show, counselors that I've gone to. And there's a very different approach between traditional counseling and EFT tapping
Right.
and hypnotherapy and different therapies of all different kinds, And so it's
Yes.
very fascinating to hear that. And yeah, red tape and I don't get along very
Right.
well
And
either.
I am definitely not slamming those that have their MSW or their
Right,
LCSW,
right, right. Of course.
or the NASW, but that's, they are held to certain standards. And I was very familiar with the code of ethics from the NASW, and I still take that to heart. So even though I am not a licensed practitioner, I have my own code of ethics, right? Again,
Right.
harm reduction is the umbrella that I work under. And I am a certified wellness counselor. I am certified in EFT tapping. So that would be my only piece of advice to folks is, while, yes, some of that traditional counseling and therapy isn't for everyone, I am working to get rid of the stigma around people getting help and accessing help and care and support. So find that works for you, and make sure there's somebody that does have something that's going to hold them reputable, because I have my, eCornell certificate. So I'm accountable to that. And I have my contract that I signed with Jackie McDonald that holds me accountable to my standards for my EFT practitioner, certification.
Yeah.
So I'm just not out there willy-nilly
Yeah.
with nothing holding me accountable. So I think that's really important, is find somebody that works for you and make sure,
Yeah.
they're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, I feel like finding somebody that works with you, finding somebody that you connect with, who you can feel yourself opening up to, is certainly the most important. And
Yes.
hopefully, do the research, make sure they're a good person, and
Yes.
not going to sell your secrets to the dark web or something like that. But yeah. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell us where we can connect with you online and learn more about EFT tapping and value yourself coaching.
So I have both a Facebook-based page and an Instagram account, and those are both under Value Yourself Counseling. And then I am working on my website. It's almost done. That is the goal for this weekend. So hopefully by the time this podcast is out. And so that'll just be valueyourselfcounseling.com. And then I also have a group that I started on Facebook. It is just for women identifying folks. Sorry, men, you've got enough spaces in this world. So this is just for the women identifying folks. And it's called Badass Women Breaking Barriers, because we as women have a lot of barriers that we face, some that we put on ourselves, some that society puts on us.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to create a space where women could show up 100% themselves 100% of the time. And I do go live and do EFT tapping in that group. And so that is a place where you can come and get exposure to more of that. And then if somebody wanted to work with me, I have an application process, and that's just a bit.ly link. So bit.ly/VYC apply.
Perfect. And I will link to all those below. That way they are one click away. Okay, Amanda, is there anything you want to talk about that we didn't get to today?
Not that I can think of. I hope everybody is taking good care of themselves, that everybody knows that it's okay if you're not okay, especially right now. Our nervous systems are being tried every single day in new ways that we have not had to experience before in our lifetimes. And yeah, I just hope that people are doing what they can to take good care of themselves.
Absolutely. I heard a statistic that people today hear more bits of information or see more bits of information in 1 hour than people in than adults in 1900 did in their entire lifetimes. And I think that
Oh,
like that is putting our nervous system, putting our brain just on overdrive, and we have to balance that out,
yes.
and in a lot of different ways, whatever way works for you, however often you need it,
Right.
which is probably more than once a day, right? Like
Yeah.
10 minutes of self-care before bedtime is not going to
Right.
cut it for most people.
Right. Yeah. Self-care. And self-care carries so much stigma itself, right? Because a lot of people think it comes with a price tag, right? Manicures or massages or pedicures or things like that are inaccessible. I look at self-care because self-care is another one of my niches, whole person wellness.
Yeah.
So what are you doing occupationally? Like, are you sitting ergonomics, right? Are you sitting in a good desk chair? Is your keyboard and your computer at the right levels? Like, are you taking care of your posture when you're working?
Mhm.
Financially, do you need help paying bills on time? What's kind of stress is coming up for you financially? How could you incorporate some self-care into your financial? Socially, this is a world where most of our connections are made through a computer screen or a phone screen these days. So what are you doing to kind of take care of your social, health, self-care? And then the physical, right? That looks different for everybody because I'm disabled. So for me, it is the massages and it's my hot tub and things like that. So I very much look at that whole person wellness, and it can be something as simple of celebrating, what, I got out of bed today before my alarm.
Yeah.
Like, get your adulting sticker. Like,
High
that's a
five
win. Like, what,
myself.
right? Or
Yeah.
I went to bed, I turned the TV off and I went to bed before 11 p.m. That is self-care.
Yeah.
Taking a nap, right? I love the nap ministry on she's on Instagram is where I follow her. I think she's taking a social media sabbatical right now, but she's like,
Yeah.
take your naps. Like, naps are revolutionary. Like,
Yeah.
push back against these patriarchal capitalistic standards of like productivity and working
Yeah.
ourselves to
Let's
death.
get back to siesta.
Right.
Is that what it is? Siesta culture? I think
I
so.
mean, my grandpa took a nap. He was a rancher, so he really did work sunups to sundown,
Yeah.
but he would come in and have lunch.
And then take a
And,
nap.
and ag radio was always on, right? So he'd catch whatever the ag radio, so get the weather and the ag reports and all that, and read the newspaper while he was doing it, right? So he'd kind of multitask. And he was the slowest eater ever. So he had very long lunches, right? But he would do that. And then, and especially in the summer when it was hot, like he had places where he'd go nap, and it wasn't in bed. It wasn't on, he would move the couch and lay where the vents were and things like that, because it was a way that it was,
Yeah.
you're not going to fall asleep for 3 hours because you're not
Right.
cozy in bed, but you can lay down and take that 20-minute power nap.
Mhm.
And then you can go back out and huck hay bales or take care of the cows or do that hard work that you need to do till sundown. And yes, so
My
I
grandpa
love
does
it
the
because
exact same thing, and he has a bench on, like, in the summertime, which, like, in Michigan, you don't have a lot of warm weather, but, he has a bench on the porch that he sleeps on, and it's just, like, little pads, and I don't know how he gets comfortable, but takes his little nap, and then same thing, just on the couch in the living room, and, yeah, half the
Yep.
time I, like, walk in on him taking a nap, I'm like, "Oh, sorry,"
Yep, and we knew, like, you did not disturb grandpa during his nap.
Yep.
He'd kind of give you a time, to wake him up. Because he did never, it was literally 20, 30 minutes max, which now
Yep.
they say science, like, you either need only 20 minutes or what, it's like an hour and a half, like, are
Yep.
the prime
Yeah.
times. And so, I totally learned that from my grandpa. So if I need to lay, like, there is no guilt or shame around taking naps in my life, none
100%.
whatsoever.
Oh, that is
And this
so
is also a
funny.
man that had a chocolate milkshake every night, so, and he
More
lived to
power
be
to
what,
him.
86, 87. So,
That is
balance.
awesome. Oh my gosh. Awesome. Awesome. That's so funny. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This was so much fun, and I definitely learned a lot. EFT tapping is seriously such a game changer. So I appreciate it so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You have a great day, and we will talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.